There you guys go. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through introductions, and when you introduce yourself, say things that are moving your real estate business forward. Have you made any offers? Did you send out any mailers? Have you read something? What's your niche? What is your specialty? What do you like to focus on? Rick and I, like I said, we do short, mid, and long-term rentals, and we like to hold. We buy and hold. We also house hack. Our big thing is house hacking. So we're very much into that. So if anybody has any questions about that, you can definitely ask us, whether it's online, offline, whatever. Call, text, email. We also, of course, we sell and do property management too. We help people, especially investors, buy and sell homes. And then we also do property management. So we can definitely answer questions about that, whether it be for Virginia or Florida. In the Florida area, we're in the Sarasota area is where we're at. We're actually the properties that we have are in Inglewood. And so we like that area, but we actually have ability to go a little bit out from there too. So that kind of lets you know about us. And so in my scheme of things, we've got Joe and Therese are in my little Brady Bunch corner. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and then after that is Vanessa's iPad. So, all right, Joe and Therese, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, this is Joe and Therese. We are in Fredericksburg, and we have some properties in the Chicago area, and we have one here. We are interested in the long-term rentals. Buy and hold is kind of our goal. Have them as like a retirement strategy. Currently, we'd love to purchase multifamily. All of ours are single family right now. I don't know anything about financing for multifamily, so I'm definitely interested in that. Whether it's 4 units less like owner occupied, or 4 units less as a conventional, or even 5+ commercial loan. I know nothing about commercial lending, so I'm really interested in that information and just buying more houses to buy and hold.
I have to unmute myself. So are you looking at buying more multifamilies in the Chicago area, or where are you thinking?
We would really love to purchase some property here in Fredericksburg, Stafford, or maybe Spotsylvania. I don't really know very much about any areas in Spotsylvania. We live in Stafford, Stafford Lakes neighborhood. So yeah, that's what we're looking.
So to let you know about the Fredericksburg and surrounding areas, Stafford, Spotsylvania, all that, there aren't that many multifamilies. Where you'll locate them is like downtown Fredericksburg, and most of the time they're historical, and so they don't really cash flow. And that's actually how Rick and I got into house hacking, about 9-10 years ago, because we wanted to cash flow. So if you want to be in that area in Virginia, you kind of have to make your own multifamily by buying a house that maybe has a basement apartment. And then you can have an upstairs and a downstairs rented out separately, preferably not an HOA. So that could be an option. All right. So Vanessa.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vanessa, of course. I am currently in Fort Myers, Florida, and I just got my sales associate's license. So I'm just on here trying to learn as much as I can. I'm interested in the investment portion of realty. So I'm still new, so I don't have a niche right now. So I'm just trying to learn as much as I can. And so I saw this meetup group and I said, let me attend and just listen to others and just, see the other journeys and, just see what I can, one day, just soon I want to just get my niche. And so I'm just here to learn.
Very cool. Yeah, Rick's parents actually live in Fort Myers. That was one of the things that brought us to Florida, was being able to possibly take care of them when needed. So we go back and forth between Florida and Virginia. But 1031s are definitely a good thing to know about as a real estate agent, because you will have clients that could use them. So definitely it's a good idea to pop in tonight. So that's awesome you're here.
Thank you.
Right.
I wanted to add, just Vanessa, when I was starting and got my license many years ago, it's embarrassing to say, but no, I had a chance to serve. I wanted to service all buyers because I just love buyers, and I had a few initial investment, I'll call them investment buyers, and who bought investment property. And I learned so much from them because I wanted to be a sponge. And so it's a great niche if you can like get into that community and help a few people out, because then they tell their friends. And I mean, I just had so many sales and transactions once you help one buyer that's an investor, and then they tell their friends, or you get into a network like this. So
okay, thank you.
Congratulations on getting your license.
Thank you.
Definitely. So we have A. Johnson and then Ruth Cruz. A. Johnson, there you go.
Hello, my name is Aisha Johnson, and I am currently working with a team, my dad and my sister. We are new to real estate investment. Our long-term goal is to buy and hold and possibly fix and flip. But until we get to that point, we are focusing our efforts on wholesaling. We have a possible, we're working with someone now to get a property under contract. It's a duplex. We've been kind of communicating with the owner of the property, who now have their son communicating on their behalf. So we're trying to get things rolling. So hopefully we'll have a contract, our first property under contract this week. So yes.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. All right, Ruth.
Oh, my son Dario invited me to this meeting tonight.
Very cool.
Yeah. My husband and I have 2 properties here in Woodbridge, and he's been retired for 2 years now. So we're planning on hopefully buying a different home somewhere. I don't know where yet, maybe Florida, I don't know. But I'm just here to learn too. So that's it.
Welcome.
Yes, definitely. And Dario, to let you know, I did get another response recently. You can let me know. So Dario what was the area, Dario, again? In Tennessee?
Sevierville. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, it's outside Pigeon Forge. So if anybody's familiar with that area, if they could get with Dario. But I'll connect you with this person, Dario, and I'll send you his info so that you can have that if you wanted to connect with him.
Perfect.
I'll copy and paste what he sent. So awesome. Awesome. All right, Chuck.
Good evening. Chuck Glover here, and I enable real estate investors to build their legacies. So that's what I do, and I'm in the Chesterfield area. Love meeting with you guys by Zoom. As far as development, I am excited about being at Dealmaker 2022 in 3 short weeks.
Very cool. Very cool. Definitely. All right, Dario, you're up next.
All right. First off, hi, Mom. Always getting to say hi. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm Dario from Fredericksburg. I'm a buy and hold investor and an aspiring wholesaler to roll that money back into buy and holds. I've invited tonight my mom and my cousin, the Reia's family, and my aunt, so we can all learn and grow together. I'm always looking to network with folks. Really enjoyed the last in-person networking we had, met some really cool people. Yeah, that's who I am, and look forward to learning tonight.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, 1031 exchanges are very important, especially if you ever want to sell anything. So it'll be some good info tonight, and glad you brought the gang. So Becky Reyes, you're up next. You're Dario's family.
I love it.
The whole family's here. Good evening. My name is Becky, and this is my mother, Gabriella. Dario did invite us, and I've heard for a while now about the 1031 exchange, just because I've worked with someone with, doing renovating or historical restoration and selling certain properties. So I know with 1031, it's a little bit different, but that's why we're interested. Just trying to get our feet wet and see what's out there.
Very cool.
Great, welcome.
All right, Rick, you're next on my schedule. Do you want to say anything more?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I do. All right, so I'm Rick. I'm Anna's other half. I won't say better, I'll just say other half. Joe and Teresa, you mentioned multifamily. So just to expand on that, and Anna already said it a little bit. So we do have some true multi-units, but what we've done is we've gotten several of ours we've created mother-in-law suites and made them into multi-units that way. And one way to do that is to take a basement that's either finished or unfinished, and we put we separate the two spaces, the upstairs from the downstairs, and we rent out the separate. And because of that, we're able to get multi-rents coming in more so than what we would get if we just rented out the whole house. So that's how we've been getting the higher cash flows on our multi-units. So just, we've learned a lot in that experience. We've had to create certain rules. We also do, as Anna said, midterm, but we do shared spaces in midterm. And we rent out homes by the room to make sure they get us the high cash flow numbers. We do that. We started that in 2013. We started on Airbnb, and I didn't like changing and washing the sheets every time a guest left. So that's when we went to midterm. And everybody's going through a change. Everybody goes through life. And if you have an extra bedroom, I encourage you to try to house hack or figure out a way that you can make your home into a multi-unit to get that additional revenue in. And we do it because that's the money we use to save for the next down payment. So it's just one of the ways. So we're just trying to, extract value as much as we can on unused assets, and we consider a bedroom an asset. So anyway, I hope that helps and inspires others to be a little bit thinking outside the box, because corporations are not going to take care of you. Government's not going to take care of you. And if you want margin in your life, this is what you need to do. You need to make sacrifices so that you can grow your legacy, and you can protect yourself when things happen.
So
welcome.
With our midterm rentals, I want to say to add on to what Rick said, because I don't think he said it, we actually have those furnished. Those are furnished. So what we do is we furnish we have two of them. One is a 3-bed, 2-bath house that we're actually talking about turning the carport into, there's an enclosed screened in carport. We're thinking about turning that into a 4th bedroom and another bath, because we did that with our other house. So that's a 3-bed, 2-bath house. We furnish the common spaces and the bedrooms, and then we rent it out by the room. We put like a hotel lock on each door and rent it out by the room. And everybody, we try to, match up roommates, things like that. But we have certain things that we do there. And like I was saying, with our other house, it was a 3-bed, 2-bed Rambler, but it had 2 really large living rooms. So we took one of those family rooms, whatever you want to say, and we turned it into a 4th bedroom with a 3rd bath. And so now we rent that house out with four people in that house.
A family room and a large living room. And we were like, why do we need all this? Who has a living room? I mean,
and a dining room and a kitchen type thing.
Right. And so that's why we got rid of one of the rooms and just treat one as the common areas for where the TV is. Again, we furnish everything. It's just additional way to make more revenue. So if we were,
you have questions about that.
If you were to rent out just to give you some rough numbers, if you were to rent out a floor 3, we probably would maybe get, I don't know, $2,200 for that Rambler. But by renting it out by the room, we're getting $3,000, $4,000. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot more. And we charge a utility fee, and so we're recapturing some of the cost that way. So anyway, just something to think about. Something to think about.
All right. Next on here is Crystal Weber and then William Boswell.
Hello. I'm in my car now. I'm done shopping. So I'm Crystal Weber, and my husband and I actually joined this team. Joined the meetup in Fredericksburg. We went to our first meeting last month, and as Dario said, he was one of the ones that we got a chance to talk to, and we met some really wonderful people and had a chance to chit chat. I would say our long-term goal for the most part is we haven't purchased any investment properties. We became landlords by default. They were homes that we already owned and then we moved. And so we're looking to expand the portfolio because, yeah, like Rick said, we're not looking for anybody else to take care of us. And we do want to retire at 60, and we just turned 51 this year. So we got 9 years to get busy, put our feet to the ground, and hopefully make some things work. We're looking for single family homes, duplexes. Is really start getting our cash flow up. So hopefully we're on the right track. I think we are, because we're wonderful people, and so far you all have given such valuable information, and I'm grateful for the group.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're glad you're here. Definitely.
Thank you.
All right, William.
Good evening. How you doing? I'm William Boswell. I'm in Triangle area, right up near Quantico. I attended one of the meetings in Fredericksburg a couple of years ago with my brother. He's in Vietnam right now. So I have one rental down in Williamsburg. I want to get into the multifamily buy and hold. And my fiance actually has property down in Florida. So works out that you guys are in both places. I actually saw this meeting and said 1031. I said, hey, I got to be there. That's my birthday. So that's pretty much it. I'm really new to the group, getting finances in order. So I expect in the next 6 months or so, I'll be able to do some things, and I'll be pursuing my license.
Cool.
Welcome.
Definitely.
Great to
Welcome.
have you, William.
Thanks.
All right, Suzanne minus Charlie tonight. Oh, you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, Charlie had to leave for the home office for a few days. So he's up in Jersey. And I'm half of the Sue and Charlie team. And we're based here in Fredericksburg. We've got a nice house on Lake Mooney. And we've got a couple of local buy and hold rentals, and we've got several, well, a few in Florida, but next week we'll be closing on a small portfolio that we're buying from another investor. So we'll have a lot more. Fortunately, they're all already occupied, so we don't have to worry about finding tenants. Yeah, we're buy and hold investors. We did one wholesale deal. We do some private lending. We also borrow from people. In fact, Dario, who's on this group, he funded one of our most recent purchases in Florida. Thank you, Dario, again. And so he helped us make that happen. And we're looking to retire in a couple of years. I mean, I'm ready now, but Charlie just loves his job and does really well with it. And so we're looking at retiring in a couple of years. I said, I'm gonna cut us off at a certain amount of properties, and then we can just do what we want. And actually our latest shiny object that I'm chasing is buying property in Latin America. We just were in Vegas over the weekend at an international living conference where we literally were drinking from a fire hose, and we're planning on a scouting trip to Panama later this year for a couple of reasons. First of all, I have family ties. My dad grew up there. My ancestors worked on the canal. And so we're looking to buy a vacation rental down there. And that's our next new exciting thing that we're doing.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, we just floated through there last week.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna get with you at some point and hear about that.
Yeah. We actually didn't get to go to Panama City though, because that port was cut off at the time, COVID. So we were still fighting that. But
We saw some
we got
great
back last weekend.
city views though, aerial views from the boat.
Gorgeous.
Beautiful. Amazing.
Panama is
Great
number one.
skyline.
It is the number one expat country in the world.
Yeah, it was massive. It was definitely massive. Beautiful too. Definitely. So,
Yeah.
well, wonderful. That's cool news. So where is your portfolio?
In Jacksonville,
Yeah.
not where we want to be, but it's a great opportunity.
You guys are really getting a foothold there. That's cool.
That is so
We are getting-
awesome.
Yeah, we're going to be land barons down there. We really don't want to be. We want to be over at the Gulf Coast because we like the Gulf Coast. So we're going to have to make a trip down to Jacksonville in the next 3 or 4 weeks and say, let's look at some of these properties that we own because we haven't seen them yet.
Gotcha. Well, that's cool. Congratulations. That's awesome. Definitely. Definitely. All right. We've got Nilesh Shaw. You available?
Yeah. Hello. All right. So I am in Fredericksburg area. I'm very close to the Stafford Lakes. So we have some neighbors here. I am a long-term investor. So I hold just like you guys are and the holders or collectors. I go for cash flow. That's the main motive. And long-term, lately the market has changed a lot. So it's becoming a little difficult to get the same cash flow that you used to get. So I am interested into short-term rentals because apparently there is a huge potential for cash flow over there. And the multifamily, but as you were saying in this area, I looked and there is almost absolutely nothing. Asset protection is also something that interests me. I have watched a ton of YouTube videos on how to do anonymous LLCs, etc. So if anybody has any tips on that, then I'll be looking for that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
I would say one thing, Rick and I was talking because we're in the midst of taxes, right? Taxes, right? And with the LLCs, and we actually have we changed it last year, because householders, and so we have an umbrella LLC, and then each house in its own LLC underneath of it. The thing is, in that situation, you still have corporation costs every year, things like that. You have to file with the SEC, you got to do your annual returns. And so we're looking at actually putting them in a trust with the LLC as the beneficiary. Because what we're finding also, we were talking about this today, is you do all these LLCs or whatever and all this other type of stuff. But if you don't follow all the rules and somebody actually does sue you and they pierce that corporate veil or whatever, probably really easy because we're not following all the darn little itty bitty rules. So just be careful. That's all I'm saying. Do all your research and do your due diligence and be careful. And there's all different wonderful options out there.
Anna, can I speak to that for a minute?
Of course.
Okay, yeah. So Charlie and I, when we started investing, we set up an LLC. Knowing that it gave a very thin veil of protection, but not thick enough. And as we were acquiring houses, I think there was a speaker. You had a speaker in one of these groups, Jonathan Osler. He's an attorney downtown. We actually hired him, and he set us up in a trust, in a business trust. And he was expensive, but he was worth every penny, because he did this massively thorough job. And what he did is when we acquire a property, we put it under that trust in a different series. So each property is a different series. They're all firewalled from each other.
Right.
Susan, are we talking about land trust?
No, it's not a land trust. It's a business trust.
Probably a revocable trust.
Revocable, yeah.
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 Yeah, but definitely, like Rick just put in there, consultant attorney. Find your information and do your due diligence. We are not professionals here. We are just figuring it out as we go through. But yes, so if actually, Suzanne, if you want to share his information, that would be great, because someone else is asking who you used. And so if you want to share it in the chat, that would be awesome. But it's definitely important, because like through the years, it's really nice to set it up right from the beginning, because through the years we've skipped over and changed and everything else, and it costs money. So it's better if you do it from the beginning and get it all set up and just pay the money in the beginning, and
Well,
then
you
go from
don't,
there.
you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So some people get paralyzed because they always worry about, oh, I got to learn how to set this up properly. And then they get paralyzed and then they don't do anything. That's not what we're saying. Do something. And I know, but I'm saying, don't let that stop you from buying a home or a good investment or, a great deal that cash flows. Don't let that stop you. But, we have changed gears along the way. I mean, and it has cost us money, and we pay buku bucks to Florida in LLC fees as well as Virginia, because we have all these LLCs. And I don't know.
Okay.
Again, all good. We don't know what we're doing. So good luck to you.
Thank you.
There's a lot of different options and a lot of people telling you different things. We did the umbrella thing because we got tired of paying for a tax return for each LLC, and so we're just trying to figure out how to be the best possible solution without spending the most money type thing. So just check them all out. There you go. She put that info in there. All
And
right.
you will not pay taxes for each property. It's just one tax.
Right. You just have it under the trust, right?
Right.
Yeah. Right. All right. Let me see who we have not on here. Kathy. Kathy?
Hello, Kathy.
Okay. Maybe you can work on joining in. We've got Michelle Dennis.
Hello.
Hey.
Sorry, no video.
No worries.
But it is me and my husband here. We are from Northport, Florida, and we are brand new investors. I do have a little bit of a background in real estate. I did take real estate school many, many years ago, and I used to be a loan officer. I'm actually looking into getting licensed again as a loan originator. We just recently started our LLC. Our goal is to buy and hold and fix and flip. At this time, we do not hold any actual properties. We are only in crowdfunding right now. But we are here to soak up as much knowledge as possible. And this is our first meeting.
Well, great. So I'll use this time to tell you, so in 2 weeks, we've got the networking, in-person networking. So by you, it's going to be at Twisted Fork, okay? And then in Fredericksburg, we're going to have it at the Park Lane Tavern. So and so that's always a really good time too. And so we do it, this meeting, the second Thursday of the month, and then the networking, in-person networking is the fourth Thursday of the month. So good times, definitely. All right, well, awesome. Well, glad to have you. We've got Manish. Manish, are you able to connect?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my video to work. I'm not able.
That's okay.
Well, I'm logging in from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I'm not a single family guy. I'm in multifamily, and the properties are mostly in Alabama and Atlanta area. And yeah, 1031 just piqued my interest. I mostly log into meetings here in Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, but there's nobody here to teach me about 1031, but I'd like to learn about it, and that's where I am.
Well, great. Well, glad to have you. Well, so the group doesn't know yet, but Rick and I have actually been looking into the Fort Lauderdale area and looking at multifamilies. So who knows? Maybe we'll have to. But you're saying you don't really buy the multifamilies in Fort Lauderdale, though, right?
To be honest, the entire Florida area is very expensive.
Compared to Alabama, definitely.
Yeah. Alabama, we get 90, 100 a door, and you come to South Florida, it's like 400 a door with the same NOI. So it just doesn't make sense. And we syndicate our equity, so the investors are not gonna be very happy sometimes.
Right, but we have one, we have a couple properties in Alabama also. And we actually, we just invest differently in the sense to where we would probably in the Fort Lauderdale area, we're looking more for the multifamilies to be short-term rentals. That's what we're doing here in Inglewood also. And so there, the cash flow is a little better, you know, a little bit different and such. But we just really like that area because we love to cruise and it's close to the cruise port. It might be a good stopping off place.
It's wonderful. It's, you know, but the thing is, I think we need, maybe if you can get time, explain the short-term rentals, because we do our own property management, and that, I don't know if you hire a third party. So you know, long-term property management, it's a hassle. And then, you know, if you have short-term rentals, then it's a different strategy probably, but you can tell us.
Yeah, we do. We have short, mid, and long-term, and we actually own a property management brokerage in both Florida and Virginia. But yeah, I'd love to talk with you offline. Definitely. Maybe send me your information and we can chat sometime. Okay.
And aren't we doing a talk in June? Is it May or June, Anna? About
on what?
On short-term rentals. I thought that was on the schedule.
I think it's March. Hold on. No, March is taxes. April. April. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at the meetings.
So anyway, put that in.
Alicia Merriman is going to talk about profit centers and Airbnb, optimizing short-term rentals and things. And then we were going to, in May, we were going to do like before and after and, you know, kind of piggyback on whatever she doesn't talk about and what we've done with our short-term rentals, and kind of show the differences and how, you know, how to get one started if she doesn't talk about that. So because people have been asking us for that. So yeah,
that's
definitely.
what I wanted. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Awesome. Let's see, on the list now, Smith for home. I know you've been on the meeting before. Are you there? We also have Nelson's iPhone, but it doesn't look like he's connected. Either one of those? Okay. Well, if not, then I am going to go ahead and go back to share it. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go further on with the meeting then.
Yeah, did anybody not have a chance to share?
I'm sorry?
Did anybody not have a chance to share? I just wanted to throw that out in case we missed somebody.
Anyone?
Speak now.
I think we got everybody, but
okay. Very good.
I forgot to say one thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I just want to publicly thank everybody, Anna, for putting the word out, and everybody else who replied to my request for a notary. I did connect with someone, and she is going to help us. This is concerning our portfolio purchase, so she made all the difference in the world. Inez, if you're on the call, thank you. So I just want to say
I don't see her on the call, but that's awesome. Great.
Yeah, thank you both.
Great. Well, I'm glad it all worked out. Definitely. Okay, let me go ahead and share this. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okie dokie. Awesome. So this is Reia. We actually, like I said, we have the Florida real estate doers and the Fredericksburg real estate. We just kind of kept it that way. So we got Florida and Virginia going on here, which is pretty awesome. We're joining up.
I didn't even change the bottom there. I'm embarrassed. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Rick is bad boy here.
Bad boy.
There we go. All right, changed it. All right. We've gone through our introductions. We're going to go into needs and wants and property pitches if anybody has that. I do not believe that we have the new monthly statistics because of the time of the month. And then we're going to have our featured presentation, which is about 1031s. Our disclaimer, like we said before, you know, these topics are for general real estate educational purposes only. They're not considered investment advice. Rick and I both are licensed real estate brokers in Virginia, and I'm in Florida. So we can give you information and help you with real estate and property management in both of those places. But you definitely need to seek advice of an attorney, accountant, investment professional, other people, because this group right here is just for educational purposes. Okay. And then we actually already told you a little bit about Rick and I. So that kind of tells you a little bit about there. Both of our brokerages are there if you need it. Also, we are a member of National Reia. So if you wanted to become a member of National Reia and get the yearly benefits, it is $70 a year. We're probably the cheapest National Reia out there. And then that also gets you the recordings. We do record all the meetings. So if you're unable to attend, we do send the recordings out to the yearly members if you're ever unable to attend. But it gets you all these different National Reia benefits and also access to all of their education that they have online. These are our upcoming speakers. Tonight we have Matt Linville, and he's going to talk about 1031 exchanges. Next month, you know, it's tax season, right? Aisha Hayes, she is going to talk about the 7 common tax problems and how to fix them. I got to admit somebody.
There we go.
And Matt Linville just joined us too. All right. And then in April, Alicia Merriman is going to speak, and she's going to talk about the systems and procedures for optimizing profit centers and Airbnb. And then we will be talking, like I said, we're going to be piggybacking on that and talking about our before and after, and you can see those transitions and how we have actually developed the short-term rentals and talk about that. So we've already done the introductions. So at this time, is there anyone that has a need or a want? That you need a plumber, you need a title company, like Suzanne needed a notary. Does anyone out there have a need or a want?
I do. So
okay.
I've got a need. I have a vacancy at our midterm property that I need filled. And if anybody is traveling in, you have a family member or what have you that needs it for, we can do as short as 3 months or as long as 1 year. It is at one of our shared properties where they have a private bedroom, but they share the common spaces, and it is furnished. We do things a little bit differently. We charge a utility fee, and how we do it, if they want a 1-year lease, then we charge $625. If they want a 3-month lease, we add an extra $200 rent premium to that price, plus $125 for utility fee. And I'm sharing this not because you guys probably have a need, you probably don't have a need, but I'm sharing it more so you understand how we do it, and how we rent out rooms by room. So we had a vacancy and it opened it up. And so this is how we solicit. We advertise on Facebook. We advertise in several different websites, hot pads, things like that. We get leads from all over the place. Sometimes it's a good fit. We have a very particular criteria. We don't allow 2 people, no smokers, no marijuana, no vaping, and they have to have a job. They have to have employment. So we're strict.
Working is fundamental.
So I hope that gives you some idea of, you know, I know it's probably not a normal need, but it just gives you some idea of how we are creative and trying to get an additional, well, if you multiply 625, roughly $6,000 a year in extra income by renting out a bedroom. So
it's $625 plus the $125 utility fee. And so
correct.
It's really $750, but that utility fee covers water, trash, sewer, but it also has high-speed internet and cleaning of the common spaces every 2 weeks. So that keeps roommates happy. So there's no arguments of who cleaned what or who didn't. But that's covered. And then of course, exterior maintenance, lawn care is also in that also. So, and what he was talking about is we have a graduated scale. If someone wants a short-term rental, so if it's 3 to 6 months, it's $200 extra. If it's 6 to 11 months, it's $100 extra a month. And that's how we do it.
And just to put this in perspective, the numbers are slightly different, but we do this in Florida and we also do this in Virginia. So
correct.
It's not like you can only do this in one locale. You could do it different places. So anyway,
so we're crazy. Since we go back and forth, we maintain a bedroom at our waterfront place in Florida and we rent out the other 2 bedrooms. And so that's how it also brings in more income. So we maintain a bedroom in Florida and then go back and forth
to Virginia and maintain a bedroom there.
And an RV in between. All good, all good. Crazy investors. Okay, so does anyone have a property pitch? Any other ones besides what Rick just did? All righty. All right, we don't have any numbers. Rick, you have some multiple Florida counties in here. Did you want to talk about those, or those are from January or no?
Yeah, those are January, so last month. I can briefly touch base
Okay.
on it. If you
I'll go
want
ahead
me
and
to.
share it real quick.
Yep. And I see Matt joined us, so we can get started right after
Yes.
this.
Yes.
So unfortunately, the Virginia numbers aren't out. They come out tomorrow on the 11th. And this is kind of a 50,000 foot level view of multiple counties on the Gulf Coast of Florida, and including Puerto Rico. So we pull our data from Stellar MLS. And the ones that I've highlighted in the red circles are the ones that are kind of noteworthy in my eyes. So I just wanted to kind of highlight them. January was, we're still looking for listings. Active listings were down compared to January of 2020, 46%. And if you compare it in the new listing section, we're down 1% year on year, 1%. So not too bad, but still active listings were down. In terms of pending sales, compared to January of last year, we were down 4%. And then the listings sold, we were actually up 2% year on year. Looking at ADOM, it stands for actual days on market. The numbers have actually come down compared to January of 2020. And if you look at the total sales volume, that means prices are going up, is up 24% compared to last year. And then the average sales price is also going up 22%. So this is a very wide, real estate is still very local, but at least it gives you some idea of what's going on in Florida. And it's probably very similar to what's happening in Virginia as well. And that's it for the numbers.
So we've got Matt on here, and I wanted to share this screen so you can also have his information. I will copy and paste it into the chat too, but he is actually a qualified intermediary providing a full spectrum of tax-deferred exchange services under Section 1031, of course. And he has over 15 years of experience in that 1031 like-kind exchange field, and he's going to focus on growing banking and professional relationships throughout the United States. So that is his information, and like I said, I'm going to copy and paste this. Whoops. Let me stop sharing that, and I will copy and paste that into the chat. And Matt, I saw you, come on, there you are. Let me go ahead and make it so that you can share also.
Okay.
There you go. You should have the ability.
All right, great. I'll share it in just a moment.
Okay.
So great to be with everybody. You might hear me echo just a bit. I'm in a hotel conference room, just me. So that's kind of the way meetings have been for the past year, but it's great to be with everybody tonight, and especially talking about such an interesting topic like 1031s and tax. It's just enthralling. I hope you all feel the same. So Anna, thank you for the invite, and hopefully when we walk through 1031, so let me just say, I am as fluid as I can be on presentation. I'd rather just kind of talk through some slides that I have. And as we talk about something and there's a question that pops up, please ask it, and let's talk about it, because if it's a situation that's going to be helpful to you, I'd rather talk about it than a lot of things that might not be helpful. So at least your time with me is well spent. So again, thank you all so much. And if I can, I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. So I am from North Carolina, in a town called Pilot Mountain. And if you're not familiar with North Carolina, Pilot Mountain, you're probably not going to know where that is. And if you are familiar with North Carolina, you're probably still not going to know where North Carolina is. But if you've ever heard of Mount Pilot from the Andy Griffith Show, that's where I live. And my claim to fame is not actually me, it's my wife. She is the director of the Andy Griffith Museum in Mount Airy. So kind of Andy and Barney, the whole Andy Griffith thing is a theme in our house.
Awesome.
She's way more popular than I am. I got to be honest with you. But we have fun with that. So like the little intro said, a lot of my time is spent working with investors, whether that be from single family rentals to large commercial complexes, industrial complexes. And I work with folks all over the United States. 1031s have no border within the United States. So we work with a lot of clients from California, New York, Chicago, especially in South Carolina and North Carolina, because there's so many dollars right now coming in and flooding the markets. And I spend probably 3 or 4 days out of the week in Charlotte. That's just a big hub for us right now. But my day in, day out joy is truly just walking through the process and how this tax code that is, believe it or not, last year turned 100 years old, how that tax code is of benefit to each of you who own investment property. So just let me ask this, does anybody have any experience with 1031s, walk through one, good things, negative things? Anybody had any experience at all?
I've helped clients over the years with
Yeah,
them.
help clients, direct them
Okay.
as agents.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Great. Anybody else?
We just bought from one of our properties, we bought from a landlord who was doing a 1031 exchange from the property we're buying to a new one that he was buying.
Nice. So you sold to him for his replacement property.
We bought the property from him.
Okay.
He was doing a 1031 exchange from the property we bought from him to another one.
Very nice. So you had a little extra paperwork to sign and a little clause in the contract saying the contract might be assigned and they're going to do a 1031 and you'll be willing to cooperate however as needed.
Yes.
Yes.
On our end, it was very, very easy.
Yes.
Yeah, we had the same situation, Matt. We bought 2 condos down here in Florida, and the same situation. The seller was 1031ing. Is that the
Sure, it sounds great. Almost 1030 winning. That's what I like. That's what
1030 winning? Yeah, in California. So yeah, she's in. So yeah.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, let's go to the slideshow. And again, please stop me anywhere in between and let's talk about it. Let me see if I can share my screen and get this up here. Let's see. There we go. All right. The beginning is a great place to start. Okay. So what is this whole 1031 business? And like I said, 1031s are 100 years old. So it's taken 100 years, actually really in 1984, to kind of come up with the true definition per the IRS of what a 1031 is. And here it is. If you own property that you were holding for investment, business, productive use, when you sell that piece of property and you go in with the purpose of buying other property that's going to be used for investment or business use, the IRS is not going to make you recognize any loss or gain in that piece of property. Now, we don't want to 1031 exchange a property that you have a loss on because you won't be able to realize it. But when you have a piece of property that you're selling and you have some equity that's built in that piece of property, and you're going to experience some tax from that sale, a 1031 can be fantastically used if your plan is to go back into other property that you're going to hold for investment or business use. So we'll kind of walk through a couple of scenarios there. And so I guess one of the bigger things that I talk about with people is if you're looking at selling, what is your tax actually going to be? And of course, most of us know and are very familiar with the capital gains side. But what we often get into an interesting conversation about is depreciation recapture. So not only can you defer your capital gains tax on the sale, but if you've owned this investment property and it's anything other than land, and you've been depreciating that property over the number of years that you have owned it because the IRS was so gracious to allow you to do that. And once you sell, the IRS says, I hope you enjoyed that, but you know what? We'd like up to 25% of that depreciation recapture back. So the 1031 like-kind exchange has the ability to help you to defer the depreciation recapture you might realize on a sale. And all depending on your tax structure, it's also going to help you to defer up to 15 or 20% in capital gains. In addition, if you happen to have some net investment income tax, this will also help to defer that piece as well as your state tax. So once we start stacking these tax amounts, it's not just capital gains. There's a lot more in that picture. And so 1031s again can become a very valuable tool as you're selling your investment properties.
So Matt, there's
Yes.
actually a question in the chat already, and I don't know
yes.
if you want me to kind of monitor that, but he has said, does like kind only mean residential to residential, or can it go between residential to commercial?
Okay, great question. And guess what?
There you
We're
go.
gonna go right on it. We're right on it. All right, so that is if I had a top 10 list of questions that I get, that is one of the top 10. What exactly does like-kind property mean? And when it comes to real property, it is real property for any other real property. So if you're selling raw land and you want to buy a single family rental, that will work. Single family rental into multifamily, that will work. Multifamily into land, that will work. As long as it is real property, and again, as long as you're holding it for the proper use, that investment, business, or trade. It's got to be held for investment. So exactly what does that mean? And when we're looking at single family rentals, for example, when we mean held for investment, let me backtrack that. When the IRS means held for investment, they want to see that, number one, you've kept your private use of that property, a personal use, to your 14 days or 10% of the time in which the property was rented out, or staying in it while you were making your needed repairs or so on and so forth, which you, of course, well document and keep all your receipts that you were down there working on the property. They want to see that if it's a rental property, that it's been rented out. Now, whether you handle that piece on your own, you use some type of online help from Airbnb, XYZ, whatever it might be, or you're working with a management company, that you've offered it for rent or lease, that you were asking a fair market rent, and of course that you've documented all of these things all along. And what the IRS likes to see is that you have done that for at least 2 years on a piece of property. And that's probably the second biggest question I get in relation to what type of property, or how do I have to use it, is the required use. And again, the IRS has come out to say that if you've held a piece of property for 2 years and you've used it for the right purpose, then if you sell it to do a 1031, they're not going to question your use or your intent. And when the IRS says that, that's a really nice thing. I like to hear that from them. So again, let's look at the real estate piece. Raw land for a tenant in common interest in a building, single family or multifamily, into 30-year ground lease, easement. All these things qualify real property for real property. Is that good?
There is another question.
Yes.
If the property is in a trust, is that protected at all from capital gains tax when it's finally sold?
Not necessarily, because you're still going to have a gain on that piece of property when you sell. And the real tax hit comes if you ever try to take that property out of the trust. That's going to be a big issue. But we work with a lot of folks who have property that's being held in a revocable trust, with folks who have inherited, brothers and sisters who have inherited property when a parent has passed, and they get that property in some form of trust. Well, the trust is the one who is selling, the trust is the one who does the exchange, and the trust is the one who goes out and buys. So they're still able to take effect of the 1031 like any other taxable entity. That's good. Okay. All right.
Can I add something? I don't know if this really, I just think of the property that we, if you change the beneficial interest, I'm sure that would be a taxable, exchange if you change that.
Yeah.
Right?
Anytime you get in there and start changing who gets what, when, ownership structures, percentages, payouts, whenever you start editing the written document that established that trust, there's some potential significant taxes that can be
exposed
I think
to.
it's like stomping in the dust. It just begins to kind of rise up. The action causes a lot of surrounding dust to come up. So always, one of our pivots on a lot of the very tough tax questions, because as a qualified intermediary, we can't offer tax or legal advice. We can't do that. Doesn't mean we can't make suggestions. Doesn't mean we can't work with your financial advisor or CPA attorney to make sure the transaction is trending in the right way. But a lot of these trusts, how they're established, who's in it, those details we may never know. So we always default back to the appropriate tax attorney or CPA attorney or accountant to make sure they are
Makes
on
sense.
top of that tax situation. Okay. Anything else up to this point? Awesome. Well, thank you for the questions. Yes.
No, I said not right now.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's look at some value requirements. This is probably a large percentage of my initial conversation with people when they say, Matt, listen, I'm selling for 100,000, want to do this exchange, or I bought it for 100, I'm selling it for 110,000. So all I have to do is just put 10,000 in the exchange, correct? And I have to say, no, that is not correct. So let's look at the value requirement. And here's what the IRS says, if I could sum it up neatly. They said, when you begin the exchange and you sell a piece of property, they want you in the same financial situation when you buy the replacement property. So if you're selling a piece of property for 100,000, they want you to buy a property for at least $100,000 as your replacement. Okay, so it's an equal or greater value proposition. Again, if I'm selling for 100,000, the IRS wants me to see me buy for at least $100,000 or more. And that means two things. I know you all are very, very familiar with financing and debt and all the things that go into investment properties. And so the first piece of the puzzle is the IRS scenario, selling for 100,000, 50,000 in debt, 50,000 in equity, and you've got to sell and buy your replacement property. So the IRS wants to make sure that you take all of that $50,000 of cash equity from the sale, that goes into the replacement property. And the $50,000 that you were relieved of at closing, they want to make sure you have at least $50,000 worth of debt on the new property. So there's an equal equity, equal debt requirement, because if you do not fully replace your debt, that's taxable boot, and they're going to hit you with your capital gains, with your depreciation recapture, and all those other taxes if you have any taxable boot at closing. So what does that exactly mean? A lot of people will say, well, Matt, I sold for 100, got 50 in debt. Here's my plan. when I go to closing and I'm going to walk away with all the cash. I'm going to walk away with the $50,000 cash. And I'm just going to get a $100,000 loan to buy my replacement property. And I will say, I think it's fantastic that you can get 100% financing on your investment property. That's amazing. Good job. But it's not going to do you any good, because the IRS is going to say, hey, you just walked away with cash. And just because you replace that cash with additional debt, it doesn't clean the slate. So you've just increased your debt load, and you've got to pay some tax on that cash you walked away with. Okay. So debt or cash does not offset debt relief, but additional cash into a deal can offset taxable boot from debt. So if you didn't want to replace the full $50,000 worth of debt on the replacement side, only $25,000, you could inject your own $25,000 cash, and at the end of the day, you're washed out. Okay, so additional debt does not offset cash you're walking away with. That's the big takeaway in the 1031.
So there are a couple questions.
Yes.
So if you sell one property for 100,000, can you buy two properties at 50,000 each? You can buy multiple properties, right?
Yes, absolutely. That is no problem whatsoever.
Just as long as they're over.
Yes, exactly. And if in that scenario, if there was no debt, it was just all cash deal, then absolutely they're perfectly fine.
All right. Another question says, how long would you have to wait to cash out refi after a 1031?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so cash out refi. Here's my statement. Prior to selling a piece of property for an exchange, if you want to do a cash out refi, I would make sure that it was part of a normal business plan and cycle for me to refi. So if I'm getting ready to sell and I go out to a bank, I just refinanced it 6 months ago, I want to do it again, and the IRS looks at it and says, and kind of collapses the transaction and says, oh, well, you just pulled out all of your cash right before you sold it. That's no good. But if your loan is coming due and in the natural process of your business, or if you had already had the conversation, you were pulling this cash out to go do another investment, that's a good argument for you to make. On the backside, the best advice I can give you is to wait for a bit of time. That's as exact as I can be. The IRS is finicky in how they judge that. We haven't had anybody who's been audited and had an issue. But again, give it some time so that the IRS doesn't see it as a simultaneous transaction. And at the end of the day, say you really walked away with cash and we're going to make this a taxable event. So as much time as possible.
So like a year, at least a tax cycle.
I like 2 tax years. That doesn't have to be, of course, 2 calendar years, but it can be in 2 different tax years. So if you bought it in December and you're refinancing it in the new tax year, that's a little less, makes me a little less gassy when I talk to people. I get a little bubble that gets up in my chest a little bit on some of these things, but yeah, the greater the better. And again, just making sure that you don't go out and refinance it the next day, because that's just not a good thing to do from the 1031 standpoint. Maybe a good financial move for the taxpayer, but not in collusion with the 1031. All right, anything else before we move on?
I just put one in the chat. So from a budgeting standpoint, Matt, is there a rule of thumb on what a 1031 costs to do? Is there like a percentage basis that you say, okay, this is how much it costs to sell a home. It's, let's say it's 6% plus 3% closing costs plus 1%. Is there something for 1031 that you can, put it in your noggin is roughly it's going to cost you this much, worst case scenario?
Yeah, I would. So most qualified intermediaries are going to charge a flat fee for their service.
Oh, okay.
So, and I'll give you, for instance, with us, we have a $1,500 flat fee, which covers 3 closings. Okay, whether that be 1 relinquished and 2 replacement, whatever it may be. It's $1,500 flat, as most other qualified intermediaries are. Now the fee is going to range from, let's say, $750 to $2,500, anywhere in that range. But outside of that fee, there really is no other fee associated with the closing, unless the attorney for some reason might charge a fee for reviewing numbers, any type of extra work they may do to make sure that the closing on their end is going to work as it should. But I got to be honest with you, I haven't worked with any attorneys who, I've heard of it, but I've never seen any attorneys charge any extra fees for that. So I would just be able to say, you could put in a static fee based on whichever qualified intermediary it is that you chose, and their upfront fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
No more right now.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about our timeframes. So timeframes can be a little tight. Okay. So what the IRS says is, from the point that you sell your property and close, you have 180 days to actually close and take title to replacement property and complete your 1031. Now that 180 days is straight days. All Saturdays, all Sundays, all holidays, every day when the kid is sick, every day when there's homework at night, every day that the car is broken down, every day you have a run-in with a horrible renter, whatever you may, that day counts. It really does, even your birthday. So 180 straight days, or the IRS says until your tax filing due date. So if you're an April filer, let's say this year, April 22, you're filing, and you closed on your relinquished property in December to do a 1031, the IRS says you need to complete your transaction before you file your 21 taxes. Or you file an extension so that you can take effect of your full 180 days from December. Because whatever year you start your exchange is the year that you have to file that exchange on Form 8824 in your taxes. Okay. So again, 180 days or until your tax filing due date, whichever one is less. Thank you, IRS. Okay. So, but we know the workaround, you file your extension. So that's the 180 days. And included in that 180 days is this 45-day identification period. Again, that clock also begins to tick when you sell your piece of property. You have 45 days to identify potential replacement property to the qualified intermediary. And whatever you have on record as identified at midnight of the 45th day, it is chiseled in stone. And you're going to have to close on that one or multiple properties that you identified to actually complete your exchange. Okay, so that's our 45 and that's our 180. Any questions on the 45 or 180? And we'll talk about the number of properties that you can identify.
There is a question here. Do you advise putting in a clause to find a new property before closing on the selling relinquished, or find the new property first? 45 days isn't much.
You're right. 45 days is not much at all. So the first part of that, anything you can do to help secure a piece of property that you would like to be your replacement property in exchange, that's wonderful. You can go under contract on that piece of property. You can put some hard earnest money down, whatever you need to do to secure it. as long as you don't close on it before you sell yours. Okay. Now, we can talk about a reverse exchange in a bit, but in the normal forward exchange, sorry, it's sell first, then buy. But yes, please, especially now in this market, when property goes on sale and it gets multiple offers within the first hour of it going on market, yes, please go out, work with your realtor, or go out and do what you do so well in making sure that you know what property or properties you would like to go into.
So there's another question about that. It's saying, if you don't identify the property in the 45 days, does the 1031 process stop and then you take the tax hit?
It does, yes. So if there is, so two scenarios. Number one, you don't identify anything within that 45 days with the qualified intermediary. On day 46, exchange is over with, money goes back from the escrow account that we've opened up back to you. It's a taxable event that you'll file, in that year. Second scenario, you've identified property officially, and before midnight of the 46th or midnight of the 45th day, something happens. Name it, it could be anything, and you just don't want to go forward. So you can actually rescind, you can revise, edit, whatever you need to do to that identified list before midnight of the day of the 45th day. So if you don't want to go forward, either you don't identify at all, day 46, exchange is over, or you rescind in writing your identification before midnight of the 45th day, and on day 46, the exchange is over with.
So there's another question about that is, how do you identify it to the IRS?
So per the IRS, and that identification would come to your qualified intermediary. Okay, so it needs to be in writing. It needs to have some type of timestamp, whether that be time sent on email. We still like to get faxes, believe it or not. We like faxes. We like time date stamps on faxes. We like postage on a letter if it's sent to us via mail, and the judgment on when it's actually identified is the postage date, not when we receive it in our mailbox. But what the IRS says is they want a clear description of what it is you're identifying. So if I'm buying 123 Smith Street in Pilot Mountain, North Carolina, then I need to write 123 Smith Street, Pilot Mountain, North Carolina, 27041. Or I take the description from the contract, that's my identification. I want it to be clear, because what I can't do is say, I'm going to buy 10 acres of land in North Carolina. That's a dumb example, but that's unclear. And what the IRS says is they're going to match up what you identified to what you actually closed on, and they want to make sure that's the exact same property. And I, as a qualified intermediary, if the property you identified and the property you were buying is not the same, then I'm in violation of our contract if I release money to property you did not identify in that exchange period. So it's very crucial that we get the description correct. And again, be as descriptive as possible, lot number, whatever it may be, full description pulled off of the GIS from the county description, or again, the contract or sales listing description.
So there's a couple more questions that I'm going to ask, but wanted to add something, and maybe you said it and I missed it, but that you can, if I remember right, you can actually identify multiple properties and have a list of properties. And you did say a list earlier, actually, have a list of properties, so just in case, right?
Yes, there are three distinct rules when it comes to identifying. It's the 3 property rule, the 200% rule, and the 95% rule. The vast majority of people use the 3 property rule, which says you can identify up to 3 properties with no regard to their fair market value. Okay. And so if you're selling for 100,000 and you can identify 3 properties worth $1 billion, the IRS says, I don't care. And if you can buy that, then wonderful. But for identification purposes, up to 3 properties, they don't care. They start caring on the 4th property. That's when the heart kicks in from the IRS, and they say, if you need to identify more than 3 properties, then there's the 200% rule, which says you take the aggregated fair market value of all the properties that you want to identify. So let's just say it's 10 properties. Then the aggregate fair market value of those 10 properties cannot be more than 200% of the fair market value of the property you're selling. So simply put, if you're selling for 100,000, you can identify as many properties as you want, as long as the aggregate value is not more than $200,000. Okay. So it may not necessarily work with a $100,000 property, but when we're working with people who are selling an $80 million property, that begins to kick in because they may look to downsize property, buy multiple properties in different markets. And so it matters, and they default to the 200% rule as opposed to just the 3 property rule. That last one, the 95% rule, I've never seen it used except by default. Again, you can identify an unlimited amount of properties, but you have to close on 95% of the value of those properties. And if one happens to drop off due to no fault of your own, your exchange is sunk. So it's really a kind of a backup rule as opposed to something that people strategically use. So that's the 3 identification rules on 1031.
So what you just said, I think ties, if I hear what you just said, ties into this question here. If you're under contract with an identified property within the 45 days, but then it falls out of contract for legitimate reasons after the 45 days has passed, does the 45 days start again?
It does not. No, I'm sorry, it does not. Again, that's just a static 45 days that unless there is a federally mandated emergency, that's the only time there's ever an extension of any time frame, and it's not what we want. So if the taxpayer happens to live in an area that has a federally declared disaster, if the attorney or advisor they're using, realtor they're using is affected by the same, if the property they're selling or the property they're buying happens to be in any one of those areas, then you can get an extension of your ID or 180 days. But again, we're talking about hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. COVID was one early on. So it's not something we hope for, to extend those times out. But again, if you have a property that falls out of contract within the 45 days, you still have whatever amount of days are left to identify other properties. So it may not be convenient, but at least you can add another property since you're still within that 45-day identification period.
Gotcha. One more question. How long do you need to wait between acquiring a new property through 1031 and then 1031 out of that same property?
Thank you for asking that, whoever that was. Thank you so much. All right. So,
that's Joe and Teresa.
Oh, Joe and Teresa.
Joe and Teresa, thank you so
Or
much.
Joe and Teresa, I'm sorry.
Here's where this is my comment on 1031s. 1031s are a waiting game. And here's what I mean. It seems like 45 days and 180 days goes by so quickly. And the holding periods before and after an exchange go by so slow. And this is where I usually come to kind of a headbutt with some advisors. This is what the IRS says. Whenever the IRS gives us a safe harbor over something, this is an item that they have studied well, they've had multiple suits or private letter rulings that have come out over a matter, and happens to be one of them, and they say that you need to hold a property for 2 years before you can sell and it qualify for 1031, or in regards to replacement property, they want you to hold that property for 2 years before you sell and do another 1031. Here's the blowback that I get. Well, Matt, if I hold it for a year and a day, then I move from short-term capital gains to long-term capital gains, and that shows that I held it for investment, so I'm going to do it. Well, I can't say do it or don't do it. It's not on me. But the IRS has every ability to come back and audit that transaction to see if you held it for an appropriate amount of time. Here's the other question that I get a lot right now. Okay, Matt, I did the exchange, I bought my replacement property, and I have had 3 people come to me off market and say, I want to buy your piece of property. And they are offering me an amount of money that is shocking. And if I happen to sell it, it's going to be short-term capital gains and I'm going to get hit hard. Plus, remember, if you exchange the property, then whatever your basis was in the property that you sold is now the basis of the property that you're buying. So that tax amount that you deferred, remember, this is a deferral, it's not an exemption. You've deferred that tax from the first sale, well, it's still there. Then all of a sudden you've got another offer, you've got another step up in equity, and there's more taxes due. So here's my statement. As long as you had not placed that property on the market, as long as you haven't signed an agreement with a realtor or rep, as long as you were holding that property and you can show that I was planning on holding this for the correct purpose without a doubt, but the whole reason that you're holding it for investment is the hope that you're going to sell it for a great profit at some point. Cash flow in between, but great profit. So if it's off market, no intent to sell it, and the IRS can't say, they can't come back and see an email from you to a realtor saying, hey, I really would like to sell this property. Can you go out there and talk to some people and see if anybody might have interest? That's an exchangeable property. Your intent is in place, even though the hold time may not be. So again, these are the things that the IRS, if you're ever audited, are going to come back and they are thoroughly going to vet. So you want to make sure that, that you're doing it on the up and up, because the IRS will find out. So my comfortable rule of thumb when I lay my head down on the pillow at night, hold it for 2 years at least.
Sounds good. No more questions right now, so.
All right, let's see what we got. Okay, so why the need for a qualified intermediary? Okay, so let me look at 2 things here. Number one, why the need? The IRS said that if you're selling one piece of investment property and you're going back and buying another piece of investment property, unless you have somebody in the midst of that transaction who is holding the money for you so that you do not come into constructive receipt, that's not an exchange, okay? So once you close on a piece of property without an exchange agreement in place to do a 1031, or once you come into constructive receipt of the funds from sale, the 1031 is blown, okay? So there needs to be that third party in the transaction, and that is the qualified intermediary. And so what somebody hasn't asked yet, and I want to go ahead and give this to you so that as you're out there looking at doing an exchange and you're looking at the market of who it is that can help you with this transaction, to be a qualified intermediary means really one thing, that I am not an agent of yours. That's what qualified means. It doesn't mean that I'm smart. It doesn't mean that I have the technical prowess. It doesn't mean that I've been doing this for years. It just means that I'm qualified because I haven't been your attorney, I haven't been your realtor, I'm not your CPA, I'm not your mom or dad, I'm not a related party. Other than that, I'm qualified, okay? So not everybody that says they're a qualified intermediary necessarily has the experience, has the expertise, has the needed documents, has the ability to secure your money to make sure that nothing happens in between, knows how to properly identify, knows how to work with that closing attorney or title company to make sure everything's in place so your transaction qualifies, okay? So that's important because literally I could walk down the street and whoever it is that I pass, I could say, be my QI, and they'd go, okay, sure. And that's that. So it's important to know who your qualified intermediary is, what they've done, where they are, who's working there, what experience do they have? Do they have errors and omissions insurance? Who are they banking with? How do they hold the funds? What type of account do they hold? Do they share interest with you on the monies that they're holding during this exchange period? All questions that you need to ask, okay? Before I get into this little piece, any other questions or anything that I have failed to answer well so far?
You guys can unmute yourself and ask him directly if you'd like.
Matt, there was a big brouhaha beginning of the tax. Was it the election year? It was an election issue, or because I remember our financial friends group in a tizzy about the possibility of 1031s going away, and anyway, that made me trigger and think about that it was something that it was the possibility of it could go away. And so yes. I don't know if that's where you're leading up to this, but I just remember a lot of people wanted to have things signed. Yeah. Also, what was the other one, Anna, about the trusts? There was something about IRAs, individual IRAs.
It was about the IRAs.
Self-directed IRAs going away.
Self-directed IRAs no longer being able to lend out and affecting your ability to invest in real estate in those self-directed pieces.
Right, right.
Yes, and if I could amplify tizzy to sleepless nights. It was, so the, and let me make some very, very apolitical statements about kind of the tax update and where we are on 1031s. During this 100 years, 1031s have been on the chopping block consistently, okay? The IRS would like to have as much, despite what people say, the IRS would like to have as much tax money from you as possible. And 1031 is just such a dynamic tool. And let me say, it's not a tax loophole. This is not an under the table, whisper in the ear type of transaction. This is a well vetted, well written, well tested section of the IRS code and well written within the Treasury regulations. Okay, this is when I start to lose people. So I'm sorry if I hear heads hit the desk, I apologize. But so it's crucial, but it's been on the chopping block for a while. In 2017, under the Trump administration, which we normally think of a Republican-controlled White House, House, and Senate as an extremely business tax-friendly type of administration. However, in 17, 1031s, we almost lost them, period. So the bill that was passed in 17, fortunately was amended at the very last minute to only exclude personal property from 1031 exchanges. So We worked with a lot of people who were selling aircraft, selling boats, they were selling herds of cattle, they were selling fleet vehicles, art, coins, whatever it may be, or industrial properties that had a lot of personal property within the sale. So in 17 or in 18, when the bill was passed and enacted, personal property went away from 1031 like-kind exchanges. Then with the Biden administration and their desire to find ways of raising tax revenue to offset what they wanted to do in the Build Back Better bill, 1031s were a great talking point for many of our representatives and senators, because a lot of people like to hear that they're going to take away the ability for rich people to defer their taxes. So they were thinking about putting in a cap at an individual capped at deferring $500,000 worth of gain. That's the most they could do. Well, I would say that 85% of our clients are exchanging properties that are way, way below that limit. We do have some people and companies and entities who are well off, as in selling huge properties, REITs and such things. But the vast majority of our clients are mom and pops. They're just like yourself. They're just like my wife and I, who are selling properties and deferring so that we can reinvest into more property, so we can increase our cash flows, and we're investing back into the community. We're making a difference in how we invest our monies. So it's not a deferral for rich people. I'm not saying you're not rich, please don't let me say that. I'm just saying for the people that we think are the rich people. So when Build Back Better was passing through the Senate, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana was the very last one to stand up and make a motion to the floor. And his motion was that nothing would change in the 1031 tax code, that it was too important for Main Street America for it to go away. And he got a resounding unanimous voice vote from the Senate, and hurrah, but it was 2 a.m. and it was the very last vote, and I think everybody wanted to go home. So I think they were fine with saying okay. When the bill moved to the House, you then had the House Ways and Means Committee, who makes the recommendations as to what would change from the tax side to then help offset any money spent for the Build Back Better bill. When they came out with the recommendations, 1031s were not a part of that recommendation. And that was due in large part to Chuck Schumer in New York, who he and other key House members, not their voting or not their vote support people, but their financial supporters wanted no change to 1031s because they are exchanging. I know for a fact that our senators and representatives, they themselves and their families take effect of 1031s, and they know the economic outcome from exchanges. If you do away with exchanges, you do away with our ability to defer these gains, but you detract business from qualified intermediaries like myself, from realtors, both residential and commercial, from the attorneys, from all of those painters, woodworkers, construction folks who are making improvements to these properties, your local tax base, your state tax base, and your national tax base. So this last little piece here, $91 billion worth of labor income added in 2021 just due to 1031. So it's a big piece. So my great comfort right now is to say that it's going to go back on the chopping block at some point. That's inevitable. But right now, and should midterm elections cause a change in the structure of the House and Senate, right now, many would consider any tax moves as impossible. if there is a change due to midterm, then certainly that again would be impossible. And we will have a comfortable time period in which 1031s are not going to be talked about for a while. So we're confident. Our trade association, the Federal Exchange Accommodators, have lobbied very hard on both the Republican and Democratic side to educate and make sure they understand just how detrimental any shifting of this 1031 policy would be to all of us. Now, not everybody shares that opinion, okay? That's my opinion. I have some skin in the game, but not everybody feels that way. But that's at least my 2 cents on that.
Good info. Good info. So there's another question. Can you 1031 multiple properties together to purchase one larger property?
Yes, you absolutely may. And what happens in that scenario, since let's just say you're selling 3 properties for 100,000 and you're going back to buy a $300,000 property just to make it easy. When you sell those and you identify, what we like to do is we like to put those into separate exchanges if possible. The reason being is if you put all 3 into one exchange and you identify that one property and that one property falls out, well, you can only identify up to 3 properties for those 3 properties you're selling. And your identification would be this: I'm buying 100% of property B with the 3 properties I'm selling. That's simple, normal. We will suggest sometimes they break those out and they do 3 separate exchanges. And in those 3 separate exchanges, they are identifying, okay, I'm buying 33% of 123 Smith Street. And I'm going to identify these other 2 properties just in case that property falls through. So we always want to be on guard for that $300,000 property to possibly drop off the table for any number of reasons. And sometimes spreading those 3 properties you're selling out to 3 separate exchanges can offer you the benefit of identifying additional property to make sure that you have properties to close on and you're not taxed.
Rick just asked a question. Go ahead, Rick.
I heard about a 1033, and I've heard that they are a little bit more flexible when it comes to the time constraints. And I just wondered, you don't hear about the 1033, you hear about the 1031. So
right, yeah. So 1033 is eminent domain. So when the state comes in and they claim your property for the highway or for any number of reasons, you have the ability to transact either a 1031 or a 1033. In most cases, people will choose to do a 1033 because, just as you said, it's a 2-year time period. There's no need for a qualified intermediary. They can take that money into their account, whatever they want to do with it. But by the end of the 2 years, they have to buy a similar type property. So they could not have land be affected by eminent domain and take those monies out and go buy multifamily. So it has to stay within the same class of property. So for that reason, most people will just either just take the money and pay their taxes and go on, or they can transact the 1033, or they can go into the 1031 and they have a little more option on what they can go into on the replacement side.
And it's just on eminent domain? That's the only condition that a 1033 can play in?
There's eminent domain. I think there is, and that's not my strongest area, Rick, but I think there's fire, some type of disaster that happens. I know it happened a lot with aircraft. If the aircraft happened to be in any type of incident or accident, they could go 1033. But honestly, I haven't read the regs in a while. But those are the things that I remember specifically from some of the conversations I had. And really, I only get into that whenever it's should I do 1031 or do a 1033? And kind of give the positive reasons for 1031. But those are the things that I can remember. Rick.
Cool, thank you.
Very welcome.
Great, no more questions right now.
Okay, all right. So before I wrap up, let me, and I didn't bring a slide on this because I just kind of wanted to talk through this. Outside of a normal forward standard exchange, we also have two other forms, and that's a reverse exchange and a construction exchange. And we are doing 400% more reverse exchanges this year than we've ever done. And what the IRS says is, okay, and somebody alluded to this earlier, let's say you're selling a piece of property and you want to do 1031. Well, you own land somewhere, and gosh, it'd be great to take those 1031 funds and build a property, build a house on the land that I already own. And the IRS says, no, you can't do that because you can't use 1031 money to make improvements to property you already own. So how do we work around that? And how has the IRS allowed us to work around that? And it's called a reverse exchange. And simply put, reverse exchange is when you need to go out and you need to buy that piece of property before you're able to sell your own. And why is that becoming so popular now? Scarcity. That's the reason. So what we end up doing is we form a special purpose entity, always an LLC, and with the taxpayers' money, however that money comes about, whether it's cash they have in hand or they're able to do some type of bridge financing or creative financing, we take those monies and we go out and buy the piece of property for them. Think of us as a parking garage. Okay, we went out, we bought the property with the taxpayers' money, and we are parking it in our garage for 180 days. That's what the IRS allows for us to do. Within that 180 days that we are now holding that piece of property, you, the taxpayer, would need to sell your piece of property, do your normal 1031 like-kind exchange, and your identification would be the piece of property that we're holding for you in the parking garage. And as long as you close and take purchase or take title to the property that we're holding for you within the 180 days, that's a clean, wonderful, tax-deferred 1031. There are 10,000 nuances to this, way more than you'd ever want to discuss with me. But it's very possible. And that's also the case when somebody's buying a value-add property. Right now, it's happening a lot with apartment complexes. They're buying a value-add property for $1 million. They're selling for $2 million. Well, they're left with $1 million. Okay, so they want to take that $1 million that they wouldn't be able to spend, and they want to make improvements to the multifamily or apartment complex they're buying. So we go in and buy it for them with their money, and they become the GC on the project. They make the improvements as much as they can make within 180 days. And then when they sell their piece of property, they're able to use as much of their 1031 funds to buy a now improved property. But again, has to happen within 180 days. And I don't know if y'all know, but materials are awful hard to come by sometimes. So that 180-day time frame really becomes tight. But usually that's grading, curbing, pavement, cement, foundation, whatever they can get done within that 180 days. So if anybody were to have questions on that scenario, my number's up there. You can call me, email me, text me, whatever, and we can walk through that. And for me, that's it. Unless you have more questions, I could talk to you all night. So, but if there's anything else I can answer for you, I'm glad to.
Joe and Therese, any final questions? You asked some great questions.
Dario has
tonight.
one too, Rick. So maybe
I don't
know if you want to stop sharing your screen or if you.
Yes, I'll stop sharing. Yes.
And then so sometimes people feel more comfortable. So Dario had a question and
real quick, yeah. Can you let's say 1031 half of like a property and then take the tax hit on the other half, let's say 1031, 50,000 of it, and then just take
Yep. Absolutely, and that's very possible. You can always walk away with cash. It's not an all or nothing deal, but you want to make sure you know what your point is. So there's some point in that 50,000 that is going to not give you the advantage of the 1031. So if there's a $50,000 being deferred and you want to walk away with 10, that's great. But at some point, there's a diminishing return on how much you can walk away with in your tax hit. So you always want to make sure you're working, you know your basis, you know your expenses, so you're not doing away with the advantage of the 1031 because you walked away with too much money.
Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Therese, did you want to say your question?
Sure. I was wondering, can you 1031 exchange from an investment property to a primary residence or an owner-occupied multifamily?
Okay, so primary residences are not allowed from the 1031 standpoint. That's just kind of a flat statement, but there's a lot of things you can do outside of that. So if you were selling investment property and going into an owner-occupied multifamily, yes, you can do that. You want to make sure that you have well segregated the amount of money that's going to go into the 1031 and what properties they're going to go to, or rooms or areas in the property, and what's going to be your primary residence. So you need to have those segregated out. So that's one thing. The other side to that, Teresa, is that I deal with a lot of people who are selling an investment property and then they go buy the property that, hey, you know what, at some point in the next few years, that's the property I want to move into. And so 1031 into mountain property, whatever it may be. You've deferred all of your tax. You're still in your primary residence, and at some point you sell and you take effect of section 121, right? So that's your primary residence exclusion, $250,000 worth of gain for single, $500,000 worth of gain excluded for a couple when they sell the primary residence. You then move into the investment property you bought up in the mountains through your 1031. Now, again, you want this to be clearly after 2 years of ownership of that piece of property, renting it out, doing whatever you need to do, document. You move into that property, okay, and you want to have owned that property for at least 5 years, okay? The residence piece is you need to call it your primary residence for 2 out of 5 years, right? But you want to make sure that you've owned it for at least 5 years. And after 5 years, and you sell that piece of property, you take effect of section 121 once again. And then you exempt any gains in that piece of property. And this is the one time when that tax deferral of the 1031 is actually a tax exemption. It's gone away because it's eaten up by what section 121 allows you, okay? The other piece of that is, of course, you move into the residence or you continually flip property through the 1031 until you pass, it goes through your estate, your heirs get the step up in basis, hopefully that's still around, it doesn't go away, and anything that you defer through your 1031 is eaten up through the step up in basis once it goes through your estate. So great question, great example on the primary residence and owner-occupied multifamily. But another way that people are really taking effect of section 121 and 1031 together. If you have time and you are patient, yes.
And own for 5 years.
Right, what you don't want is for the IRS to look back at any point in that 5 years and see that it was used as an investment property, because they can go back potentially and look at, let's say you've lived in it for, you rented it, it was an investment property, you moved into it, and that 5 year span, when you decide to sell, that 5 year span still has 2 year or 1 year of 1031 use. then they can go back and look at the capital gain depreciation recapture that would be allocated to that 1 year and tax you on that. The rest would still be 121. So that's why it's best for a full period of 5 years of personal or residential use. And 121 would be 100% of your $250,000 or $500,000 exemption. There's ways, folks, there's ways of doing things legally and ethically to accomplish what it is that your heart desires with real estate.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if nobody else has any other questions, Matt, we thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for all the great information.
Absolutely.
Does anyone have any other questions? Any other questions? All right. All right. Yeah, great information.
All right.
Definitely. Definitely. We totally appreciate it. I actually had reached out to Matt because I heard him on Sunrisers, which is Wendy Sweet's group. So that I like that group. That's happening tomorrow.
Yes, it is.
At 7:30. Definitely. All right, Matt. Well, awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And did anyone have any other questions in general, or are we signing off? I think, oh, we got some thank yous in the chat. Definitely. Let's see if there's any other questions.
Thank you,
All right.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely. Okay. Well, awesome, guys. Well, if we don't have any other questions, then we're going to call it a night. Going once. Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Matt.
Have a nice
Definitely.
evening.
Reach out to him if you guys need anything. All right.
Thank you
Awesome.
so much.
Thank you.